one of the main things with gouache okay, so here's the thing. With acrylic, it's once you put that stroke down, it dries, that's it, right? With acrylic, it's with gouache, it's water soluble. Okay, you're probably going to like gouache better, is my guess. You're probably going to like it a lot better, and you're probably going to take to it faster, because I think you guys understand what I was talking about when I said acrylic's kind of a difficult medium.
Yeah,
it is. Okay, but the process of gouache, I mean, usually most opaque media, you're going fairly thin and transparent to begin with, then you're building up a little more opaquely, then you're building up to your fattest opaque, to your lightest light, to your fattest brush marks. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So usually the thinking is dark to light. Okay, that's the rule of thumb. Okay. The other thing with gouache, and also I'll pull it up here in a minute because I think I need to kind of talk about it with the gouache here. But if you put it down transparently, it's not really going to activate that much. It'll activate a little bit, but not that much. Once you start going thicker, start to build up the opacity, when you're laying down your brush strokes, you're going to have to be careful, because the reason you see a lot of really ugly, muddy gouache paintings is because people don't know that. And they're going and they have a layer down and it's dry. Then they go back over with another color and they start working over the other thing. And what they're doing by working over it too much is they're mixing the color underneath with the mixer, with the top. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And what that's going to create is mud, because you're just going to get colors you didn't intend to mix. And once you get, X amount of colors mixed together, you got mud. You got gray or you got brown, one or the other. You got a neutral. Yeah. Mm-hmm. One of the things I think they don't talk about enough with gouache, it's a very paint handly medium. I'm trying to find a brush here. Okay, so things like, if I'm going to put down a dry wash, I want to turn this camera on over here in a minute. I got to do this real quick though. Let me do this. Now, what I really want you to do is pick a medium. I mean, here's what I think. This is just my opinion. I think it's good to get pretty good at the major mediums. Now, some people go a different route and they go, I just want to get great at this one. That's fine. That's usually the path people take. You probably, you might go, I really like watercolor and blah, 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 and that's fine. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I like to be able to switch it up. I just do. Okay. Number one, my favorite thing's oil. And then the other ones kind of roll around, where, like, if I don't have a lot of time, I love having watercolor there because I can just bust that out and do stuff really fast. Kind of the same thing with gouache. And then acrylic, a little less than gouache, but I like acrylic a lot. Okay. Most people, a lot of people don't.
Like I said, it's just something I need to get used to.
Yeah. I just think that's true of any medium. Okay.
Do you find it easier to, when you were starting to paint things in acrylic that are more organic, so that you don't have to try to keep perfect lines and stuff?
Say that again.
Like when you started off with acrylic, was it easier to do things that were more organic shapes than these straight? Like, I had a really hard time getting those straight lines.
The reason I focus on this particular scene is it's sort of, I'm trying to get you into very broad categories that help you learn a whole bunch of stuff in one thing. Just like we did more organic stuff with the kind of children's booky stuff, then this one's very hard edge, because a lot of people, if I don't do that, you're not going to know how to do that at all. Okay. And all those techniques that we learned with the brush and scale and all that, you can do that in watercolor. You can do it in anything. Mm-hmm. Okay. It's just a technique, right? Did I find it easier to do organic? I didn't find it easy to do anything in watercolor or acrylic when I first started it. It totally kicked my ass.
Yeah.
And I remember going into my first class, I think I talked about this, with Bob Cotto, great instructor. It wasn't him. Always talked to Gary about it. Amazing instructor. So it was something with me, I don't know. But and going to that first class where we had to paint from life, we had a model and all that, and it was costume, it was, I wish I had that. And I probably do some, I don't know, I might not have that one because that one was pretty embarrassing, but it was absolutely terrible. And I remember just looking at it and going, I have no clue how to do this. Now, I didn't have a lot of paint experience either, so I was kind of at two disadvantages. And then what was interesting is that I started seeing little glimpses of what my classmates were doing. And that really helped me a lot. You know, like I remember watching this guy and he sort of, and it was in acrylic. There was a model in front of him. It wasn't in that class, so it was in a workshop. And I just happened to wander in the workshop. And he kind of knocked out the head shape or whatever, the drawing. And then he sort of washed in one value, you know, maybe the mid value. And then he just sort of washed the whole other side in a transparent layer for like this shadow, like on the side of my face. And there was something about that really connected with my brain where I went, oh, big shapes, wash them all up, and then start working into those shapes, okay? And then, like I said, over at Imagineering, then I saw Nina Ray Vaughn's the one that broke it open for me when I went, oh, I see how she's working, okay? Because I really liked her work, and she always worked in acrylic. But it took a while. And I don't think, because we did this in acrylic, don't think that I'm going, hey, this is great for this. I'm just saying, it's just when you come out of like sort of a hardcore illustration environment, the way Art Center used to be like that, because it's, you know, it's probably, well, it is. It's much more digital based now. And I don't know how much of this information they're doing. I don't know. I'm assuming they still are. They just tended to do this kind of thing in acrylic or gouache, a lot of times gouache, okay? Now, what you're probably going to like about gouache is that you have the ability to go opaque like acrylic, or you have the ability to wash it out early on like watercolor, which is how we're going to use it, which is kind of how we used acrylic, except that with gouache, you can let things dry or whatever, and it dries very quickly. You know, and you might have an edge there. Maybe it's a ground plane and you're like, that's too hard edge. You can just come back in with a little damp brush, clean brush, and you can just swipe it and blend an edge. Or, you know, maybe if it's a thicker pass of paint, you can take that brush and drag that paint over the other paint. So you can get really nice edges and really control that, which is much harder to do in acrylic. Because acrylic, once you put it down, you can't do anything to the edge. You have to come in with now you got to mix the perfect value and color and temperature and all that, and then come in there and do an in-between value, whatever, which is much harder to nail. Okay, especially early on. But I do think it's something you should think about, you know, turning forms. And one of the ways I learned that was because of acrylic, especially before they reformulated acrylic. So like I said, I'm using Golden Open now. Okay. This stuff stays open longer, which just means it stays workable, wet longer, whatever you want to call it. So you have much more time to play with the edges and things like that. Having said that, when I use this on the side of the road, because sometimes I'm sitting on the side of the road and it's like 105 outside, it dries pretty fast. Okay. But I think anything would dry fast except for oil in that kind of weather, right? I'm actually going to go today and try and find an umbrella so I can stop sitting in blazing sun like that all the time. Because I'm starting to react on my skin now, which is weird. Because it never used to do that. Okay, hang on. Oh, this is a Lynn. Hey, Lynn.
Hi.
It looks like you didn't build it up much more.
I tried. I had very limited time, but I did add some more small stuff.
Why do you have limited time?
A lot of unexpected stuff happened that I didn't want to.
Okay,
and I couldn't fight around it.
I can tell here this didn't get built up, right?
Yeah.
I think you had a good start. I think if you built it up, you would have ended up in a pretty good place. Yeah.
Yeah. I can still work on it, right?
Yeah.
Even
as long as you
after?
hand it
Oh,
on
okay.
time. As long as you hand it on time, it's fine. And look, I give a lot of leeway with acrylic. I think it's a tough medium. Okay.
All right. Okay.
And my main goal in this class, I think you guys know, it's not about creativity in here. It's about mechanics. It's about you leaving here and at least understanding these mediums. I don't expect you to master any of them right off the bat. Okay.
Mm.
So that's kind of important.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'll work on it more.
Yeah. And, you know, just see where you can get it.
Okay.
Where's Elizabeth? Elizabeth just bounced out. I don't know where she is.
I'm right here.
Okay. What do you think?
I think I need to spend more time on it.
I think it's pretty good, actually.
Thank you. I
Go ahead.
like I said, I had a hard time getting those straight lines.
Yeah,
And,
that's a trick. Look, it's easier in gouache. Okay. One thing that you probably noticed in that part of this equation is it's hard to get, or it's not hard, but you got to get used to it. It's hard to get it to that still opaque, slightly creamy consistency that flows. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
And like, if I was doing this on a job right now, you know, now I do it digitally probably, but I mean, if there was some reason why I was doing this, or an illustration, Liquitex has come out with something just in the last year or so called acrylic gouache. Okay, so what it is it's acrylic, but it's formulated to behave like gouache and dry like gouache. Okay, and the things you're going to see with gouache that's different is that it's very matte. The surface is really matte. Okay, but like if I was going to do these, like, you know, brush and scale stuff, I might go and get my acrylic gouache because I have a bag of that too, just for those parts. And the thing I would use acrylic gouache for too is if I took a
Oh my God, bro.
if I took a liner like that, real nice sharp liner. Where the hell's my camera? There it is. Right. And I wanted to go and put like a telephone line. I might go get the acrylic gouache and do that because it's going to flow and it's going to be super opaque. Because that, I took that paint out. I don't have that sketchbook with me right now, but when they first came out with it and did a little location painting with it, man, it's really opaque. You know, it was actually hard for me to get it to not be opaque, which is actually really valuable when you want to do that. Okay.
Mhm.
That's the other thing with gouache is a watercolor, but it's opaque. Okay. And what they used to do is put, I think, chalk in it or something. And I'm hearing now it's being formulated a little different, but so you got to be careful with gouache, you know, with anything. If you're putting too much white in your paint, it's going to get chalky, right? And gouache, you're going to see, has a really specific look. Actually, I want to bring some stuff up after I go through these real quick. So what questions do you have, Elizabeth?
I don't know. I don't really have any questions. I don't think.
Do like now that you got this all set up, like I would come in now, be careful here too. This light and then this shadow value feel like two different colors,
Mhm.
right? So make sure you're balancing enough of that in there so it feels like you're shifting to a shadow value.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Mm.
What'd you mix in there? Was it purple?
No, I don't know. And you know what was weird is each time I'd go to work on it, like one day all my mixtures came out burgundy. Then like last night when I was working on it, everything was purpley. It's like each day I work on it, I can't, it's like my paints want to make a certain color.
Yeah, what you got to look at, what I would look at, because I've had that, I think everybody goes through that, is what's the temperature of the colors you're using? Okay, like I remember one time I can't remember what I was using, but I kept throwing down these lighter values and they were blue, they were super blue. And I'm like, why is this so blue? Like, I don't even think I was using a blue. And I finally looked at the colors I was mixing. And I'm like, well, that color you're using has a ton of blue in it. And it's reacting with this other color. And that other color is pushing the blue in the other color. Okay, so if the other color has, let's say this one has a lot of blue and this one has a lot of yellow or something, right? Then it's going to start pushing my mixture like super green. And it might not be super obvious when you're just looking at the color, because what I'm trying to get you to see is that when you're first learning color, people tend to go, like they go to the art store and they take the cap off the tube and they go, oh, it's red. That looks like a nice red. But if they look next to a red that they know is a warm red, like, okay, I know this is a warm red. And then you look at that next to another red, you'll go, holy smokes, this one's really orange. Like a lot of times you need that other thing to see what the color is. Okay. Like ultramarine blue, if I sit it next to cobalt blue, literally on my palette, I really can see the red in that ultramarine. Okay. And that red is sitting in there And if you're not thinking about the red and then you mix it with like some green or something, there's some red in there. It's going to kill the green a little bit, right? Because those are complements. Even though you're looking at it and going, well, this is just blue. It's like, no, it's got red in it. Or if you're mixing flesh tones, I've had this happen. I'm mixing flesh tones and I'm going for those real pinky, like Caucasian flesh tones, right? Real standard, pinky nose, whatever. And it's going muddy. And I remember doing that, mixing it and going, I don't get this. And then eventually, I don't know if my teacher told me or something, but I was using like CAD red, I think CAD red medium or something. And it was really it's a really purpley red. Okay. And it was killing my flesh tones. Like, I don't want that blue in there unless I want that blue in there. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to bring that, if I bring the blue in, if there's too much blue in a flesh tone, and as I start mixing, let's say I'm washing this part in or painting this part in, this is all going to look like a 5 o'clock shadow because there's so much blue in there or too much green in there, because a 5 o'clock shadow can go bluish, greenish, brownish, it can go to all these different colors. And all of a sudden you're painting a woman and she looks like she's got a 5 o'clock shadow. You know what I mean? So you've got to look at the components of the colors you're mixing. Okay. And that's why I kind of go, warm and cool this, warm and cool red, warm and cool yellow, warm and cool blue, warm and cool green. Right. And then I know how I'm controlling my temperatures in relation to each other. And I know I know that ultramarine blue, like I think of ultramarine blue a little bit as a purple, right? Lemon yellow is green, right? That's, if you're looking at a yellow, a cool yellow, it's usually greenish. Now, what's interesting about like lemon yellow or something like that, it's a super hot color. Okay. So if sometimes, even though it's a little cooler, I'll add it to really acidic sunlit foliage and things like that, because it just gives it that acidic pop. Where sometimes I can't quite get it with my warmer value or my warmer color, my CAD red or CAD yellow medium, right, which is warmer. And then you can look at other hot colors like phthalo blue is a really hot color. Quinacridone red is a really hot color. Obviously, brilliant oranges. Phthalo green, any of the phthalos, phthalo green. I call them electric colors because I can take those. If I was doing neon, I can take that phthalo blue and add some white to it and pop it in there, and it's going to look like neon, right? It's almost, it's just a really intense color, okay? And then some of your colors are going to be staining and some are going to be covering. Like burnt sienna, especially in acrylic, tends to be very staining. It's not that covering. Now you can get it to cover, but you're going to have to thicken it up a little bit. And you're going to get that in most colors, in most paints. Some are more staining and some are more like a little more opaque. Does that make sense? And you got to be aware of that kind of stuff too. And I know we're going down the rabbit hole of a lot of this information. I'm trying to get it in your brain now so you'll start looking for it as you're learning. Does that make sense? Because all this stuff took me a long time to learn, and I had great teachers, okay? But I just think there were certain things they didn't like. I think it would have been good if one of them looked at my acrylic stuff and went, here's what you're doing wrong, dude. You know what I mean? Like you're starting off fat right off the bat. You're going right in with fat paint. A, you ain't got good enough. You ain't good enough yet. You know what I mean? Like you want to do all of prime, you ain't there yet. And B, you need to learn the methodology, which comes out of oil for opaque media, starting off thin, transparent washes and building up to your opaque washes or your opaque strokes. By the way, Richard Schmid died this week. And he was a monster painter. Yeah? You should look him up. Huh?
I'm sorry.
I didn't know him, but I just thought he was amazing. Okay, Elizabeth, I think it's a really good start.
Thank you.
What do you like the most so far? You like watercolor?
Well, these are the only two things
That's what I'm saying. Which one?
Oh, watercolor.
Okay. I love watercolor too. I like all of them. That's probably my problem.
But I think once I learn color and how to mix, I think it will be more enjoyable.
Yeah. But you'll land on one that'll be your favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah. And mixing that.
Because I think that's what really discouraged me was like not getting the colors right.
Well,
And
that's
then,
what,
and then I'll start to go, and then my little amount of color that I got that I thought was okay dried up before I could.
Yeah. But
And then I can't get that color again.
wait a minute, did I talk about that? Like how you can keep your paints wet with acrylic longer?
Yeah, but I had them on the paper towel, the wet paper towel, but then where I was mixing them. Well, last night when I did it, I ended up putting cellophane over a white plate and mixing them on then. But how do you mix on something that's gonna stay moist?
No, what you do is you take, this is a commercial version of it, which is the first time I've ever had a commercial version of it, but it's actually pretty good, right? This is a small palette, which I really like. And it's got, you don't need this commercial version, hang on. And it'll keep your paint wet pretty long. So this one comes with a little sponge, right? And it goes in here, okay, which is the same. Okay, so this can just be paper towels. You wring them out. So they're almost, they're just damp. They're not wet, okay? And then I put in, before I started using this, and I still do this, if I was going to do it like my regular palette thing, I just grab like a piece of vellum. In this case, I probably use 2 sheets if I use this. And then I just put that on top. Okay. So what that's going to do is barrier. I don't want to mix on this, right? So I'm just going to be mixing on a wet mess. But the dampness and the coldness of that on here will keep your mixes wet for a long time.
Oh, okay. Because the ones that I had my, all my colors out, those I covered up and those stayed wet, but the mixing ones weren't.
Well,
so.
then, okay, so then what I do is I have my, so what we just said, let's say that this is my paper, damp paper towel. This is my, whatever my paper mixing surface is, right? In that case, it was that. Then I get another one of these, more than this, okay? And I do the same thing. I squeeze it all out and I get it damp. Then
Is that a paper towel? What is that?
Towel. It's just a paper towel. And then I fold it and I squeeze all the moisture out of it and I put that over here in my palette. And this is where I put my piles of paint. I don't barrier this with paper or anything. It's just I put my piles of paint right on this damp paper towel. And I have more than this. I get like 3 or 4 things and I squeeze it all out and then I fold it all nice. And then I just put all my my piles of paint on that damp surface.
Yeah.
And they will stay wet forever.
Yeah, that I didn't have a problem with. It was the ones that I was mixing that were drying.
Yeah, that's normal. But
that was really, really helpful to learn that technique where you said put it in a Tupperware and then.
Yeah, I can put this, if I have my piles of paint on my little damp paper towel, and then I have this, because this is what's weird about this company. They have good ideas, they don't execute them well. So if you notice, I don't know if you can hear that. Let's try it. See, it's breathing. Why does this not seal completely? It seals enough. And another trick, because I've done this too, especially with the open, if I have what I just said, I have my vellum covered damp paper towels for my mixes. Then on top of that, I have my damp pile paper towel. I can put this in the fridge and it'll stay wet I've kept it wet literally for like 2 weeks. Okay, now some of the mixes are going to dry up a little bit because they're just thin. But my piles of paint will stay wet I've kept them wet for 2 weeks. And that's before, I think that's before the open acrylic. Okay, so the open acrylic is formulated to stay wet longer, but I think that was with Liquitex.
Okay.
And I like Liquitex's product a lot, and another thing, I like Golden Open Acrylic. I still use for any medium I'm using, like we've used acrylic matte medium, we've talked about gouache or gesso. I use Liquitex. That brand for me works better for that stuff. And Liquitex's paint is good too. It's just that I feel like they've been out formulated by this brand. I mean, if I can keep it wet a little longer, of course I'm going to, right? Still dries pretty quick, but not nearly as quick as Liquitex does, okay? But I still think that Liquitex, and Golden has a ton of mediums for acrylic. I'm not a big medium guy with acrylic. You might be, and they're probably great. But the standards like matte medium and gesso, I like Liquitex. Okay, like I've tried other brands because like in class I was doing a demo once and I forgot my matte medium and somebody goes, oh, I got Winsor Newton. Tried it, really gummy. I hated it. Okay, and I think I've tried a couple others, and I just Liquitex, and Liquitex is a pretty solid brand. Okay, and they're easy to find, by the way. Like if you're in a pinch and need paint, you can probably get Liquitex at Michael's. Okay, now once you get serious about it, stay away from student grade paint in any medium. Does that make sense? Don't get, who's this right here? I think I'm missing somebody right here. Who's, your name's not coming up. Hang on. Okay, I don't know why that name's not coming up. I have two that no names are coming up. Can you guys see the screen? Can you tell me who's here? Let me see. Carla's now here.
What do they say?
I don't know, but I know Carla's here, so that tells me. Okay, the only person I'm missing is Carla. I'm not marking you absent today because I'm late, so I don't really have a leg to stand.
Oh, you mean whose picture is this one?
Carla says she's been here.
I'm not marking anybody late today anyway. If I'm late, I'm not going to mark anybody else late. Okay, whose is this?
This is mine. I'm here.
I think this is a pretty good start too. What do you think?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
yes.
What were you gonna say?
I feel like some area is like too gray in my drawing site, a little bit dirty.
Oh, okay. Well, that's, you're talking about it's gotten too gray. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay, that's just mixing. If you're mixing complements and things like that, that's a color mixing issue. Okay, you've either mixed it too neutral, or you mixed, I don't know, maybe too many colors and it became neutral. Okay, if you mix too many colors together, the rule of thumb is you don't really want to go over 3. Now, sometimes there's exceptions to that, obviously, because I might mix 2 different kinds of blues together for a reason. But I don't really consider that 2 colors. I still kind of consider it 1. But again, if I'm mixing 2 blues together, if I only have 2 blues on my palette, one of them is going to have some warmth to it. So I got to think about all that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So if you mix too many colors together, you're going to get mud. Okay. And if you're mixing complements together to get a shadow value, you want to let, like, let's say you're doing that orange building right here. Okay. If I'm going to mix the shadow value of that, I'm going to knock in a little blue into it, but I want to probably let the orange live a little more than the blue. So I want to balance it out so it looks like the orange is turning in from a shadow perspective, but it's not turning into just a dead gray. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it might be you're over mixing the complements, or you've got too many colors in there and it's becoming a mess. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. What other questions?
No, so far.
Now, what I would do, like you, Elizabeth, anybody that's got it this far, like I noticed both of you got this knocked in pretty good. Now I would go in and get loose and maybe mix a lighter value, lighter yellowy value of the, the light that's going to hit that, and just go in and go bink and just hit it. Boom. Don't overthink it. Like just hit some fat brush marks. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Same thing down here on this tree you could probably do. I want you to go in a little bit, and don't worry about ruining this. I've already got it. It's fine. Go in with some fatter brush marks now. Okay. Just here and there, just to get that point of how that's working. Because you got the base set up. Now you could go bam and hit like a little lighter value, a little warmer value, and right on top of it. Right. But keep it nice and loose. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
But that's a good start. I get that street a little darker.
Oh, okay. No problem.
Burnt sienna and ultramarine blue is a good start there.
Okay.
Hey, Carla.
Hi, Mike.
Yeah, really dark, yeah?
Oh, man. Okay.
But you're starting to get how to light this stuff up, correct?
Yeah.
What I do like is you didn't put screaming lights in it.
I like
Yeah.
that too.
Because what a lot of people do is they go in and they just get yellow right out of the tube and they go bam, bam, and orange and bam. You know, and it's like, dude, it's too much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Let's try something here.
Ooh.
So I could probably pull it up to about there. And
Okay.
another thing I'd probably do, I think we talked about this for sure on this one. I'd mix up a nice, and I'd still keep some color in it. I like to keep some color in it.
Okay.
So I like to put, it could just be a little touch of warmth. It's barely there. I do the same thing with real paint. I don't like to go totally to white usually. And I'd light up these, whatever they're called, traffic lights. That might be a little strong, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. All right. Oh,
See,
that's
it's nice to get a nice pop. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I
And
see it.
then here and there, I might come in here and go, I'm going to get a little lighter value of this just to vary this a little bit. See what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And again, the reason that happens, somebody might have a, and I do it with the various values I have here. You know, somebody might have a lamp close to the window. There could be, you know, there could be a desk back here. So now there's a mid light back here. There's one very close and one back here. Then there's the ceiling lights. So just those little pops here and there, not
Yeah.
too much, start to break it up and feel like there's something in there.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
You have questions?
No, I was just sort of afraid to add those hot spots. I felt like it looked wacky in a way.
I want you to go. They look what?
Wacky.
I don't think they look wacky. Does that look wacky?
Well, the way you did it, it doesn't. But when I tried it looked weird.
Here's what I want you to do. I don't want you to be afraid. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because I want you to experiment. This is a mechanics class. Okay. This isn't my illustration class where I go, I want a really nice finished piece. This isn't that. This is, I want you to put a lot of effort into it. But if you want to take a chance and go, I want to go with some real fat paint right there. And then you go, oh, I wrecked it. I don't care. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, don't do that over the whole thing. You know what I mean? But if you want to give, this kind of thing a shot, go for it. Because you got to take chances or you are not going to learn this stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, I've been doing this forever, and I feel like every time I make a painting or anything, I'm taking a bunch of chances that I might wreck it every time. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And besides being too dark, does everything else look okay? Or do you think
too bad? Okay, so what you got to really think about when you're doing, especially a night scene, is then I start going, well, where can I? Because I can design the light, right? So then I go, I've got this light here. I'm just going to do this really half-ass. Hang on. I might go, okay, there's a light here. Maybe I'm going to lighten that up a little. Same thing down here. If there's a light here, I might light this up a little.
I tried doing that. I don't know if you can see like the little yellow under the light post, but I guess I didn't do it like light enough.
I think you're probably discovering the weirdness of, at least to me, of acrylic, of getting it to lay down exactly how you want.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like sometimes, so here's what I want you to do. You got to learn the next, like the phase of that where it's like, okay, I want to get it a little more built up, a little more opaque, but I don't necessarily want to go totally opaque, like fat paint yet. You know what I mean? And what I do a lot is I scumble dry brush a lot. Like I'll take a number 10 round and I'll get fairly dry paint on it and I'll sort of scumble it over it, and just sort of dry brush it over it and I'll raise up the value, especially if it's a very small leap in value. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I'm just taking,
try doing that dry brush technique that you talked to me about
Yeah.
last class on the building that you said it was too dark, but I guess I don't know, I was just afraid of going too light and like making
Yeah.
it look really, really tacky.
Yeah, everybody does that. Don't be worried about learning or take this now and go and have at it.
Yeah.
That makes
Okay.
sense? Because now you got it set up. Now you're not worried about it. Now, I always have to be careful when I say that. That's why I don't say it too much in the beginning. Because every now and then you get people who are lazy and they go, oh, cool, I can just do a crappy job. And I'll just say I tried all this stuff. And it's like, dude, I'm going to know if you did that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to know if it's just a half-assed job. Okay. What other questions? Oh, what I was going to say is I look for, and this is a little later down the line, to be honest. Like this area, let's say back in here, there's a building here, and let's say there's a space between here. That's one of those places where I might go, well, I can light this up. Hang on. Let me go a little redder here. I might be able to light this up back here a little bit. Because I could, and I'm doing this sloppy because I'm doing it with my mouse because I'm standing up. I might have a little bit of light bouncing. You know, there could be a light source in between these buildings. Does that make sense? Oops.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think about things like that, you know, or they could, you know, maybe there's a little, sometimes I'll go, like I'll put a little cafe in front of something just so I can light it up. I can put those bulb lights. I can put some candles on the tables. I have an excuse to throw some light in there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So see how if we light that up a little bit, you know, and then I have to, you know, justify it. Like I'm not making it look like it's glowing enough right now. I'd make it look more like it's glowing. And then sometimes I'll just come in here and go, I'm going to put a point source light here. And maybe it's here. You know, and I'll light it up down there. So then it looks like there's a little ground light lighting up the side of the wall. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And and then I'd scumble it out so it went a little lighter to dark.
Mm-hmm.
So then I'm giving I'm just starting to light it up. And once I light it up quite a bit, it starts to feel like a very active environment. And then once it starts to make sense as a whole, I don't have to describe everything as much anymore because it's just like, oh, it's a city. There's cafes, there's, you know, stuff going on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And the reason I didn't put people in this or ask you to put people in it, actually, maybe I'll talk about that after when we get into gouache or cars, is I didn't want to make it any more difficult than it had to be, right?
Yeah. I was like so tempted to do like little people.
Sure. You could do that. Do it. Actually, I'll do a demo of that next week. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure it's just like little tiny shapes. Like you don't even have to go like all detailed with them.
You don't want to go all detailed.
I was just like more interested in how would you do a car or like car lights or like traffic kind of.
Well, car lights are going to follow the same idea as this. Now, I don't know if you've ever noticed, because I always notice this. Sometimes I'll see car headlights and they are crazy blue.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm looking for that kind of stuff, like temperature stuff. You see my new Farmer Boys tattoo?
Cool.
I know. I'm looking for the temperatures and things, and it's going to be sort of the same thing. I mean, if it's a, I think I got one. Hang on. Not mine, but you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Now, the way she's doing is what I've talked about before. Remember when I talked about light going hot, hot, hotter?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this, if you notice, let me see if I can get this in another window. She goes, look, let me get closer on it. Number one, and I'll talk about this in a second, but look, it goes sort of red on the outskirts, orangey, and then right into yellow. Hot, hot, hotter. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yellow's very hot, orange is less, red is less. I put those three together, I get this effect. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And then she's bouncing it around back here. And then you get the same thing here. She's using a pretty hot green, then she goes into a yellow. There's probably a lot of green still in that yellow. So you're building boom, boom, boom. I always think of it in threes, right?
Yeah.
Now, if I wanted to go, and then sometimes if you really want to make it crazy hot, like in a car or something, then I can add that point source into it. She kind of did a little bit here. See how there's some pretty white paint in there?
Mm-hmm.
It's still got some yellow in it, like I talked about. So you can see the value right there. But let's say I'm going to bring it way up here. And then I can put a really hot point source in these things. You see what I mean?
Oh, damn. It's cool.
Watch this one. See that?
Yeah.
So hotter, blazing hot. So that's like if you had an incandescent bulb and that little filament in there is, if you look at it, it's burning white hot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So see how that really lights it up intensely if I pop in that little point source?
Yeah. That's cool.
Put it there. So 1, 2, 3, and then if you need it, bing, that almost white value, right?
Yeah.
And then what else sells this?
What was that?
What else sells this idea here? What's making it work?
Like the values or? what do you
No,
mean?
just what's making the idea of this lit environment, like all these cars, what's helping it?
The temperature. Of
Temperature, but also the reflections down here.
Oh.
Okay, so now this one, you know, a lot of times people sort of paint these things like the street's a little wet. They do that on purpose, okay? But it's probably going to catch. This feels like it's a little bit wet. Also, look, it's doing this real hot thing, and then it cools out. It's doing this real warm thing, and then the car cools out. Next
Yeah.
time you're looking at like that kind of lighting, especially stage lighting or something where there's a really intense orange light source in sort of a dark environment, watch how much of stuff drops off and goes super cool right out of it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So when you're thinking of lighting, it's not just that surface idea of going, oh, I'm going to make this real bright. It's like, okay, you're going to make it bright. Now you're going to make a bright light source, which means now I've got to bounce that around because that light source isn't going to exist right there. It's going to bounce on the ground. It's going to bounce on a wall if it's over there. How far away? How far is it going to start to fall off? It's got to affect the things around it. If it's a very warm light source, is it going to push the things behind it very cool? All those things together, what really make that kind of thing, which is why this works. Yeah?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
So when you're walking around, this is what I do. When you're walking around the world, I'm cataloging that. Every time I see something interesting, I go, ooh, you know what I mean? Or I do a little painting of it, but I catalog it. You know, I go, that's weird. Look how those cars have that warm light on the front and then it drops into cool. And by the way, I don't know that many lights that have that warm a light source. So she pushed that idea. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because then that gave her an excuse to push the cars cooler. And now you got a warm, cool thing happening. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And like for the lights on the Ferris wheel, did she only just use like the brightest light or did she use like the medium?
Look
of
how
the
many
light?
colors are in there.
Yeah.
So she's using the same idea back there, but much less intense and much less much less information because it's way back there.
Hmm.
Right. So and this whole thing it's the same thing you do when you're doing a day scene where you kind of going, I'm going to put all my detail up here and it starts to drop off and there's atmospheric perspective. And, you know, and also like, I see this all the time. You guys probably don't. When you go up, you know, cause I every day, basically I have to go down the 18 or up the 18 or whatever. And I get this big expansive view of the whole valley down below cause I'm a mile up. And like at night, I always look at it different times of day. And then as it goes into evening, I like to look at it and the ground, all that, well, it depends on the lighting, but a lot of times the overall mass of the land mass down there will go really cool. And then and then you'll notice there'll be a dance of like lights that are all sort of this warm yellowy color. Then there'll be some that'll go green. And it's like, because they're, you know, like all those yellow lights might be an industrial park or something, right? And then if I'm painting that, a lot of times as the lights go back, I'm probably going to take a fairly loaded brush, but very dry, and I'll just skitter over the top. So it just kind of dances a little light in there. And as I come forward, I'll be a little more pinpointy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So one of the things you haven't, and I'm hoping that this class will help you with this. Start doing that. Start looking at the world. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And then break out a little watercolor kit or gouache kit or whatever you like. Get a little kit and make little notes on it. I mean, they could be as simple as like, I might do a blue swatch trying to nail that value that I see in the color, temperature, and everything I see of that valley down below. And then I'll distance a couple of colors over just to capture how that works. It might just be a little swatch with some stuff on it just so I can remember it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I also just catalog it. I just look at it. Like you're an artist, you need to start looking at the world and seeing how it all works. And you're really not just looking at it to go, how does the whole world work? You're going, how does the world work so I understand it so I can pull it into my paintings, right?
Yeah, that's cool.
And then also, this is a really good example of somebody who's a fine artist who's using, let me see if I can find this. So here's another use of the warm cool thing in an entertainment design painting. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's the same concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why does this work? Because he understands lighting, right? He understands temperature, he understands color. And also another thing to look at this, which is interesting, is look how abstract this painting is. You see that?
Yeah. I love it when it's like that. Like you think
Yeah.
it's so detailed and you go in, you're just like, oh man, like
The best way to learn how to do that is to do what we're doing right now, paint. Now, and the other thing, what I was saying about Elizabeth and I forgot who else it was, go in and start doing some of that fat mark making over it because that's how you get to this. Does that make sense?
mm-hmm.
This is fat, bro. You know, it's digital, but it's the same. This is the same concept. Okay. And if you look here, this creature thing is basically a big silhouette that he lit with the cool and then bounced the light off the bottom and lit it with warm. So he's constantly playing off that warm cool thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you look in here, there's not a whole lot there, right?
Yeah.
Or here. Hang on. Well, here's another really nice indication. I really love indication painting. Here's another one.
Ooh.
Look how abstract that is.
Jesus.
And the other thing I like about this is he created this very warm environment, but then when you go down here, not only is that a cool environment, it's being lit by screens, right?
Yeah.
Or it looks like screens. Look how specific that blue is to those kind of screens. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like it's sort of washed out and sort of not super, you know, it's sort of desaturated. And then over here it gets a little more saturated. But look, there's nothing there. By the way, there's your people indication too. See it?
Yeah, I see that.
That's really good. I'll do a little demo on that later.
Cool.
And then one other thing I wanted to point out, what was, oh, here. Right?
It's not an oil painting?
No,
Jesus.
we're learning this right now in my Photoshop 101 class. How to do this kind of brushwork in Photoshop.
That's cool.
But what I love to point out here, to your point of indication painting, is look how abstract that is. You see it?
Yeah.
Look at his ear. And then look at here. Because I love, this is my favorite kind of, I like indication painting, okay?
Mm-hmm.
See his another thing that's cool is the way this cool leathery wing comes over and the light's coming through it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then look at his body up here. It's totally abstract. Right?
Yeah.
And then look at this night here in the foreground. It's all there, but when you go up on it, look. It's pretty damn abstract. This guy's name is Greg Rokowski, by the way. He's one of my favorite
Great.
digital painters. Look at this guy. Nothing there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Also, look at how he breaks up the edge of this. And then look how where the ground meets these rocks, how he put a nice big fat brush mark there. Here's a mistake that people make, and we've talked about this. It's transitions. Okay. They'll put that rock sitting on a hard line, and it's like, where does that ever happen? Right?
Mhm.
It's sitting on dirt. It's going to be an irregular surface. It's going to be plants or dirt or something. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You got to think about your transitions. And then this stuff, it looks like, I mean, look, that's totally abstract. It looks like he also pulled in some texture from a photo probably and just painted over it. Right? When you get up close to it, man, this thing's totally abstract.
Yeah. All I see is just a bunch of little dots.
Yeah. And then look here.
Cubes.
See how the windows look? This window is a different temperature from this bank of windows, and this is a little purpley, and these are very warm. He's dancing it around, and they're in banks, right?
Mhm.
Because usually a building is lit kind of by the same lighting, right?
Mhm.
Like they're not going to have a building where they go, okay, this line of lights on this floor is sodium vapor, and then 20 feet over here it's fluorescent, and then 20 feet over here it's incandescent. They're not going to do that. The whole thing's lit with whatever kind of lighting they use. Now there can be lights inside of that window. Again, if people have personal things on their desk or lamps, those could have a different temperature. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you got to think about those things. It's what I'm trying to get, especially entertainment design students, start thinking about is where this stuff is coming from, and stop looking at those paintings I just showed you and copying it. It's like you don't understand where it's coming from. It's coming from what we just talked about. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
It's coming from the real world and some knowledge of painting. And then if you do that, if you learn this kind of painting, you learn traditional painting, you start understanding color, you start understanding temperature and how light works in an environment, you're going to be a million times miles past everybody else. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because everybody right now are in these entertainment design programs, and a lot of them are very surface, and they're taught by people who don't know jack squat about painting or design or anything else. And then they're cranking out these students that like they know Photoshop, they know crappy Photoshop painting, they don't know anything about design. You know what I mean? You gotta expose what's your major?
My major, I'm still undecided about that. I'm super undecided.
What made you want to do this?
I like painting.
Okay. We'll use that to leap off to everything else. Yeah?
Yeah, I really like to oil paint.
Yeah. That's why you're attracted to those kind of paintings. Right? And then what I always say is like, if I can do all the stuff I can do with paint, I go, when I transition into digital, I'm doing something digital. Do you not think that seems super easy to me? When I'm used to doing this with traditional paint. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm bringing in all this subtle knowledge of actual painting that these entertainment people just don't even get. Okay. Everything with them is screaming. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Big, fat, out of the tube color that doesn't work. They don't understand subtlety. They don't understand lighting because they're going for their source for all that material. They're going to what I just showed you. And it's like, no. You need to go where those people came from, especially Greg Rokowski. I'm sure he's just an oil painter. And then he sort of moved into that from an illustration perspective and into digital, right?
Mm-hmm. And if I wanted to start getting into like digital painting, what class would you suggest I should look into?
My Photoshop 101 class, probably.
Photoshop 101.
And here's the reason. How much do you know about Photoshop?
I know nothing of
Okay,
Photoshop.
then Photoshop 101 for sure.
All right, cool.
And by the way, I don't promote my classes. I'm not going to tell you to take my class if I don't think it's the right class. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If I think it's somebody else's class, I'm going to direct you to somebody else. I'm not doing that. But if you want to learn this kind of stuff, and then you don't know much about Photoshop, take Photoshop 101 because that's really what it's for.
Okay.
Like right now, we're learning all the techniques to do that kind of painting. Okay.
Are you assigning to do one of those paintings? Because that'd be cool.
God, I just went blank. I'm doing it kind of two ways because I have people in there who aren't really illustrators or whatever. So I kind of give them that. And then if it's somebody who's like, I want to do a full-on painting, then you can do a full-on painting.
All right, cool.
Because I get a wide variety of people in there. I have architects in there. I have a computer science major in there. I have graphic designer there. I have illustrators in there. I have entertainment design people in there. So I try to make sure that I'm encompassing everybody's interest. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Super fun. I love that class. It's fun. And it works really well online. So I'm
Oh,
doing,
I was gonna ask that. Like, do you think it's better in person or online?
I think everything's better in person, but I think Photoshop 101 works fine online.
And like besides Photoshop, like what other programs would you need to get into like that class or be prepared to be in that class?
For Photoshop 101,
Is it
I'm
just
assuming you're
Photoshop?
coming in with, I assume you're coming in with no knowledge in that class.
Oh, okay.
I don't expect you to really know anything. To be honest with you, I mean, I was hired as a foundation instructor, which is where my brain lives anyway. I like getting people early on so I can start to train them in the way that I think is correct. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because I'm not a fanboy and I don't teach from the perspective of being a fanboy. I think that's dangerous.
It's funny.
Well, it's true though. Because I look at fanboy paintings, I go, that looks like a fanboy painting. It doesn't look professional.
Ouch.
Well, it's
Nothing
true
I do
though,
is
you know what I mean?
professional.
Huh?
Nothing I do is professional.
Nah, you got to stop doing that. Stop saying that about yourself. Where's Cassandra?
Thanks for the feedback, Mike.
Yeah. Yeah. And anytime you want to throw something at me, throw it at me. Okay.
Yeah. Remember how I said I was gonna do the character for the next illustration? Well, I'll send the drawings that I have since you said you didn't really want to spend time on the drawings. I'll send them to you later on today.
Okay.
All right, cool.
Okay. Where's Cassandra? You here? I know she's here.
Can you
Okay,
not hear me?
well,
Hello?
oh, you there?
Okay, so it was just a problem with my mic. I'm here.
Okay. I think we talked about this. It looks like you're going too opaque too fast.
Yeah.
And also you got to pick colors that make sense. It feels a lot like these are out of the tube a little bit. Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah. Because what people do is they go, well, I don't know what color to make the building. So I'm gonna make this one blue and this one purple and this one mean green. And you could do that, but you got to like make it coherent. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Are you understanding that you got to wash it up and then build to opaque?
I do, but I tend to use a little bit more of the paint than the wash because it just feels a little bit more controlled with the paint, but then that makes it a little too opaque a little too quickly.
Yeah, you really need to learn that technique of going from like fairly transparent washes and slowly building up. Now, there's also alla prima painting. That's a different thing. Okay. Alla prima painting is when you're just going straight in. Like if I'm doing a head painting or, you know, models in front of me, I'm going to go much more direct. You know, I'm going to go to fatter paint a little faster. Still going to wash it up. Just the process will be a little faster. Okay. But I really, and you're going to have another shot to get that idea now that we're going to gouache because it's the same kind of idea, right?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? My computer didn't.
Gouache is going to be the same idea. So you'll have another chance to, you know, slowly build it up.
Right.
Yeah. And then hopefully it'll make more sense again there. Okay. Because it's the process with gouache, at least in that sense, we're going to go fairly transparent washes and start building up our opacity. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have any questions?
No, not really.
Okay. So let's try and nail that on the gouache thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, guys, hang on. Let me, actually, it looks like you cleaned it up a lot, Robert.
Yeah, just trying to fix the sky.
Now here's a good spot right here to experiment. If this usually down towards the horizon, it's going to get lighter, right?
Yeah.
Take a round. This works good with a round like this. This is a 10.
Okay.
Grab some paint without a lot of moisture on it, without a lot of water on it, and go down to that bottom and with a with a lighter, slightly more opaque mixture, and sort of scumble up a lighter and then let it go up into the sky. It'll be a nice experiment, right?
Okay.
And I'd start there. Now that you guys have these, go in and try going what I just said, building up a little bit of opacity here and there, maybe scumble it, go into some fat brush work, and just, I don't care if you wreck it. but I want you to go in there and start to play around. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because everybody's got to do that. Everybody's got to have a, you know, there's something always happens to me whenever I'm doing a painting or even a drawing. If I'm doing like a finished drawing, I always get to, I just did it yesterday. I just get to this point and I go, okay, I've drawn this thing like 4 times and it all sucks. And I keep getting rid of it and starting over. And then I go, I don't care about this anymore. This pisses me off. And then as soon as I don't care about it anymore, then I usually nail it. Right.
Hmm.
I mean, that's just my stupid thinking, but give me like 2 minutes, you guys. I'm going to fill this up with water and I want to talk about a little bit about gouache. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, can I just say something real quick?
Sure.
You solved a question that I've had for a long time on this thing that I've been working on.
Yeah.
Where I have a sun. Here, I'll show you really quick. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. But I have this, it's beadwork. And my sun looks like a fried egg. And I'm like, why does it look like a fried egg? Did you see that?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But I guess the white
Aw,
should be
that's
in
cute.
the middle,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, see, this is
Yeah. Because you're going
the
hot,
beaded.
hotter. And then
Yeah,
if you
so
want that
I can't
flat-
undo it now, but
And remember that works, you know, across the color spectrum. So if you know you're doing a blue light, you can do the same thing. You want it to go, the outer part is the part where it's dissipating, then it's a center part, and it's always dissipating from the point source of the light. Now the
okay.
point source isn't always blazing white. Sometimes it is. And then sometimes I'll go, it isn't, but I pop that little hit in there and I go, ooh, it just lights up. And I go, it looks cool. Screw it. I'm leaving it. You know what I mean? I mean, once you understand these things from the natural world, which is where all this is coming from. And when I say natural world, I include the, you know, our world, cities, artificial lighting, all that stuff, right? What everybody has to understand is you got to understand these things. You can't just go in from a surface level and just go, oh, I like that painting, so I'm going to do that thing right there. They did. It's like, but they also don't understand context. And it's like, okay, well, that environment was that kind of environment. It's foggy. It was this, it was that. Yours is like twilight on a sunny day by Newport Beach. It's not going to look like that. But they don't know how to interpret it. Why? Because they don't have the base fundamental knowledge of how that works. And that's the key to everything. Okay. It's paint handling, but and mixed with understanding the natural world and things, and understanding lighting and putting all those things together. Okay. Brushwork. Like those Jennifer McChristian paintings have beautiful brushwork. You know what I mean? I mean, I think she's amazing. I don't think she comes up enough, in my opinion. And she, you know,
Thank you, Robert.
You're welcome.
look at these lit environments. Or this, look at how she captures sunlight right here. Look, it's just some mundane scene, but it's beautiful. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And that's another thing when you got, you know, go out and paint. Okay. You know, on small scale. Okay. I'm going to go out and do a whole bunch of these probably this week. Little paintings. Hang on. You know, unfinished, right? And then I have one that's semi-finished. I'm going to organize my office. Yeah, I'll find it. Oh, well, I'll find it. It'll pop up in here. It's in here somewhere. So I go out and I do these little studies all the time, right? Sometimes I get my ass kicked, which is good. And I do a lot of them in my sketchbook, this little studies, right? Those things are so valuable if you want to get good at this. I don't care if you're illustrator, entertainment design person, children's book design, whatever, it doesn't matter. That is so valuable. I have a little watercolor book that big, keep it in my regular sketch bag. I got a little watercolor kit, little tiny watercolor kit, and I can pop, and I got a tube of white gouache in there, and I can just go at it, right? And like instantly I have this in there, right? So I can just instantly start painting, okay? Watercolor is great for that, okay? And then you can add a little, and I'll show you guys how to do this as we move along. You can add a little white gouache to it to opaque it out here and there where you need to. And man, you can just have a blast doing that. I used to go down to downtown LA and do it all the time, right? And it was really fun. And then sometimes I'd go to downtown LA. I want to start doing this again and just set up my paint. Back then it'd be oil on the street at night. You know what I mean? And do night scenes on the street. And it was
No,
really
I don't
fun.
know.
Well, you guys
I don't know why you'd want to go to downtown LA at night.
I like downtown. I like urban environments. I don't want to live in it anymore. I like it. I love industrial environments. That's one I was trying to find. Is I got this industrial one here somewhere. Just weird. I don't know where it is. I just saw it. I like industrial environments, things like that. Okay, and I also like the natural environment. You know, when you live up here, it's fun to go down there. You know, but I don't want to live down there anymore, right? And I like talking to people on the street and stuff. It's fun. But look, that light. So it's not just night. It's just capturing these really, look at that, man. Look at the brushwork there. Look how she simplified this reflection into this big washy mass and then just broke up the edges to get that reflection. You see it? That's simplification, okay? And that's something that you'll learn by doing this kind of stuff on location, okay? Like you're looking at stuff and it looks very complicated. How do I simplify it, right? I think she's a badass. Look at the plane thinking here. See how she knocks in these planes? See that? Man, she can see, man. Look at this. This is great. I love this kind. See, I love this kind of stuff. Right? I know exactly where that is, by the way.
Is that Boyle Heights?
No, I think it's over closer to the Arts District. There's some great stuff down there. But, you know, when you're looking at something like this for real, look how she simplified it. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 masses. Right? So when you go into this environment, you squint down. I'm going to be teaching this as soon as that stupid class goes through. Yeah? I cannot wait to teach that class. I can't wait to teach that. All right. All right. So give me 2 minutes to set up here. Right. I'm pretty much set up. I just got to get water and stuff. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. I just want to go over a couple of simple things here. Oh, by the way, I don't know why there was a weird connection problem because I had the same thing when I came in here to Zoom. I don't know what's causing that. I'm going to pin this. Okay. So I've got here, this is just my gouache palette, right? This is all caked gouache, okay? Now, if I want to get a really creamy sort of oily mix later, I'm going to have to probably put out a little bit of a thicker paint. I usually just put it back into the well again because then it'll just cake up and I can keep reusing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's not going to go as opaque with this transparent stuff, okay? One of the main things with gouache, or probably anything really, you're seeing it with acrylic too, is you got to get the consistency just right. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if I come in here and, you know, always have a rag up. If I come in here, let's use orange so you should be able to see it. Now I'm reactivating the paint. You can see that, right?
Yeah.
A little bit of wet. I usually come in here with my spritz bottle. I keep a tiny one in my bag. And I spritz this paint, get it moist again. But I'm going to put this down. Okay, so I'm going to put this down fairly thin. So that's it's a fairly thin wash. And you can see it looks very watercolory, yeah?
Yeah.
Same thing we're doing with all our paint. When it's still wet like this, I can make decisions. And I can go, do I want to go and add another color in here while it's wet? And I can get a nice wet into wet thing. So I can manipulate it just like we did with the other stuff. And I'm not worried about color mixes right now, obviously. You know, and then if I was going to put a ground color in here, I might do it while it's still wet. And I might do the other trick while it's still doing that, like we did with watercolor, and pull some of this out. So you can see how we can kind of do the same thing we were doing with watercolor and gouache, or acrylic for that matter. Right?
Yeah.
So let's dry this out. Let me dry this out. Also, I think I've said this, with your brushes, you guys can't see me, right? All you can see is my screen, right?
Yeah.
With gouache and watercolor aren't going to destroy your brushes the same way acrylic will. If acrylic dries in your brush is pretty much screwed. So let me dry this real quick. Let's try and soften this edge now. See how it's moving a little, but not much. You see that?
Yeah.
So I can do a little bit of screwing around in here, but when it's this thin, that's activating pretty good. And I can scrub it a little bit, and I still got a little bit of play time in here, even though it's, you know, I dried it. Right there, that's sticking pretty hard. Now, let's grab a thicker bunch. Let's grab some thicker paint.
Using watercolor paper?
Yeah, on this, but you could use anything. You could use Bristol board. I put it up on the announcements. You could use Bristol board, watercolor paper. The demo I did online was watercolor paper, or you could use illustration board. Yeah. Does that answer that, Elizabeth?
I'm just gonna use any paper that I can get my hand on.
Pretty much. You just don't want it to be super thin, or, you know, if you got a sketchbook with like mixed media paper in it, that probably worked fine. So I'm gonna use this cheap ass gouache I found. Let's see what this is.
What about that brand that's like Le Franc or Heels or something? It's French. It's
Oh,
like
yeah?
LB.
That might be cool.
You never heard of that one?
No. I'm just, you know, look, I want to make something clear when I'm saying stuff like that. And sometimes, and I should shut up more. But I take this really seriously. And I think if you guys come in here, you should be being taught, you should be being trained correctly. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, we're not doing our job. All right, so now I'm going to go in here with some thick paint. So let's look at that. See how thick that is? So I've got very little water in there, if any. And I'm going to put a fat mark down. Okay, can you guys see the brush stroke in that?
Yeah.
Which is what gets me all excited. Because now, I mean, you can do that with acrylic too, but now you're going to have that, I think, a paint handling that it'll make more sense for you, I think. And then I'm just going to put this ugly ass color next to it. And then again, let's dry it out. Okay, so now we got two fat paint marks next to each other, correct?
Yep.
So let's dry this out. I'm going to turn off the mic for a second. So now let's take you guys can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Now okay, so we got those two stroke, turn this thing upside down. Strokes upside down, or side by side, okay? So let's take this brush. And I'm going to get, this isn't super wet. I'm taking some of the paint off of it, right? Now I'm going to come in here And see how I can intermingle those now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, even though they were dry, okay? Because it's thicker paint. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, let me tape this back down. Now, let's look at the edges. Remember this edge and stuff, we couldn't really do a whole lot with it. But this one, see that? Look at that.
Yep.
And then this one. Now we got some nice thick paint there now, right? Now, what does that mean? That means that if I go, hey, I'm going to put some paint over the top of this and I'm doing this, what does that mean? It's going to lift this color and it's going to intermingle with my next color, correct?
Yep.
And I don't want that to happen because that creates mud. Does everybody understand that?
Yep.
So what I'm going to do now, let's dry it again. Let me dry it real quick because I still got some pretty fat paint in here. So now let's say I want to put another color over this and I don't want it to intermingle, correct?
Yeah.
Let's pick, I'm trying to find colors I don't really use. Ooh, this one went dry. That's no good. It's ultramarine. Trying to find one of my old colors. Yeah, this one's shot too. What's that? Oh.
I was gonna ask about that. Like with gouache, do they not last a certain, what's the
Some of these tubes of gouache are like 25 years old. Yeah?
yeah.
They last. Oh, here's what you should do, by the way. This is what I do. Like my watercolors, my gouache, if they're, if I'm not using them, I get one of those like kind of like a mason jar where it has the thing with the little thing that seals it. You know what I'm talking about? With a gasket on it.
Yes.
I put them in there, so there's no air in there.
Okay.
And I've got tubes of, I don't know how I've held onto this for this long. I've got a bunch of watercolor I got at Imagineering like 23 years ago, and they're all still good because I keep them in a jar. Oh, so let's try this olive green. I don't use that very much. Now here's the trick with this. Now if I'm going to put it down just thick, that's fine. But one of the things I always say, you got to be careful. You don't always have to do it like this, but I kind of usually do. If I'm going to lay it down over here, I tend to lay the brush sort of parallel to the surface. Does that make sense? Yeah? And the reason is because, and let's add some white to this, because that's probably what we'd be doing, is going lighter. Hang on. Where's my white? I'm going to mix up a little lighter value. Because then you should be able to see it. And I'm coming in here. And what I'm doing is I'm going to keep this, I could go really opaque or I could go a little creamier. See how that's pretty creamy right there?
Yeah.
Like you really got to get that creaminess just right. So that's okay. I think it's just a touch of water. By the way, I might have said this in the video, but a lot of times I don't want too much water. I'll lean it on the edge and I'll just dip the corner in a little bit because I don't want that much. That makes sense?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go fairly parallel to the surface. And I can cover it. I don't even want to hit it twice. Just like that. Okay, the reason I'm going parallel is it lays down more paint. And also, I'm not digging into the paint. See, it's picking up. See how it picked that up?
Yep.
Picked up some of the green, right? So if I start screwing around in here, I'm going to pick up all that color and start getting mixes I don't want. Okay? Let's go one more time. So that needs to be a little creamier. Mixing that. Now let's do it again. Yeah, that went over a lot nicer. Now let's go over here. And I might even want that where it's slightly transparent. That just depends on how thick you want it. Now, as I build up, I'd let that dry. I don't want to go over it with new strokes because it's going to lift the paint, correct?
Yep.
So now if I go, okay, I'm building up this color. Now I want to go back over it again. I could build it up pretty fat because now I'm building it up. I'm going transparent, a little thicker, and then this might still be wet, but totally opaque. See, it still picked some of that up because it was underneath. Oh no, I had it in here, sorry. Now I could go really fat like oil paint. Does that make sense? So sort of the same idea we've done with acrylic and a little bit of the idea we've done with watercolor. Does that make sense, you guys?
Yep.
Now, I'm going to go pull something up here. Okay, any
no.
questions on that so far?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right, so I just used a sketch out of my sketchbook here, right? Got it taped off the same way we've done it. I stretched the paper. If you're doing it on Bristol board, you don't got to do that, but I would tape it. And right here, we're going super transparent. You see that? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, then coming in and starting to warm things up. And I'm just blocking. You guys see how I'm just blocking in like transparent areas?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, then here, it makes this leap right there, where it's starting to get a little more opaque, but it's still transparent, correct?
Yeah.
Blocking all that in. Okay, then it gets, look, there's a block in, and then you can see the paint's getting a little more, it's getting quite a bit more transparent, but it's, or opaque, but it's still transparent a little bit, right?
Mhm.
Lighting it. Knocking in my shadow values, still fairly transparent, but opaque enough to cover. Or thick enough to cover, what do you want to call it. But all this stuff's pretty light. Okay, then like this kind of idea I think is important. Oh, this is a time lapse. Where, how you think about how you, looking for the actual trailer or the actual thing. But, and then starting to dance around on his beard here. That's opaque paint. You see that?
Yep.
That little light highlight on his nose right there is a little more opaque. And then here, look, now in between those, so I put in those stripes and everything sort of in a big idea, right? But then I noticed on the front of that shirt, it gets a little more orangey because it's catching like sunlight or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So look, now I'm going pretty opaque on that stroke. You see that? That's pretty opaque paint. Yeah?
Yeah.
So opaque, I build up to the opaque. That's the point. Yeah?
Yep.
Okay, questions on all that? That's basically the process, okay? So you got to be aware that you can disturb the paint underneath. You will have less of that if it's very transparent. It can move a little, but it's probably not going to move a whole lot. The thicker the paint, the more water soluble it is because it's thick and you can reactivate the paint and it's going to go all over the place. You don't want to dig your brush down into it. I like to load up one side of it and kind of just drop it, kind of parallel a little bit. By the way, that's a good trick for oil too, by the way. You want to lay paint down over the surface a little more so you're not knocking into the soup and disturbing everything underneath it. Go a little more parallel to the surface. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yep.
Questions? All right. If you guys don't
So,
Go
so
ahead.
for this assignment, you want us to start it now, or are we supposed to work on
I
the?
would like to see what you're going to paint so I can approve it. Okay. Again, here's one that I thought was a really good job.
Did you want it to be like a human being? That we do the skin?
It could be an animal or whatever, but yeah, I think humans are a pretty good place to go.
Okay.
Now, what I like about this, or I like a lot of things about it, but
Or you can do both.
yeah, in this case, what I like about it is she sort of modulated the colors nicely. How this shifts to this cool. Then she built up her opacity. I love how she, these are all in the same. That color scheme in there looks nice. It works together, right?
Can't see
And then
it.
look how this. I love
I
this
can't
right
see
here.
it.
Look at that stroke right there.
You're not sharing your screen.
Nah, you guys. That's
We have to imagine it.
That's Elizabeth's fault. All right, look.
Always my fault.
Look at this brushstroke right here. That little opaque brushstroke, and then it fades into this. It goes a little green. Those are great, man. Look at this. Like everything's not just a flat color. She thought about modulating the color and the temperatures inside of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's nice work, man. Look at that. How that goes into that green. Then when you back out of it, little wash in the background.
And
Yeah,
there's a
it's
cat
nice.
too.
It's a nice job. Yeah, and there's a cat. You can see where it's, transparent and then it's opaque. So you're dancing that opacity over the transparency. Does that make sense? Just like
Yeah.
we talked about. And then obviously these whiskers are a little bit opaque. Really nice job. And she really washed it in early on. This is a nice one too. This is ink and watercolor though. Yeah? Did I lose everybody?
Oh yeah, I remember that picture.
Yeah. I have yours in here too. Yours is there.
Oh yeah.
By the way, Humpty Hump died. Did you guys hear that?
Humpty Hump.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I did see that.
Oh,
All right.
no.
Okay, everybody's understanding what we're doing, correct?
Yeah.
What I'd like to do this week is I want you to get me whatever you're going to draw so I can approve it. They got to be finished out drawings. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That means balanced, finished drawings.
Okay.
I don't care if you go and pull them from somebody else. I could care less. And then you could just transfer them on a light table or something. If you don't have a light table, stick them up on a window, do your just light line, and then you can go in and finish it out. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bought a little light table on Amazon for like $20. I'm going to go get a new one. I don't really like it that much, but it's fine. Okay, questions?
Not really sure.
That's fine. You're going to have questions as we get rolling. The
Yeah,
video
probably.
for this, the tutorial I did for this is only about an hour long. It's not as long as the acrylic one. It just went really fast, which probably tells you something about the difference in the mediums. I can go really fast in acrylic too, but there was just way more to explain in acrylic for some reason. And I'm not going to cut them short. They should be as long as they need to be. I'm going right now. I'm going to go do one for my class tomorrow, which is going to be stylization. I'm going to go down to the Willow Woods and I'm going to stylize a bunch of log cabins and stuff.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I'll put that up. Whenever I go up, I'll tell you guys. I always tell you guys if I'm doing something else in some other class.
Yeah.
Because you can just go access it.
Yeah.
I'm excited, actually.
Yeah, you're going outside.
I'm going to go outside all this week. Okay, Elizabeth.
Yes.
All make sense?
Yes.
Okay. We're excited.
Yep.
Yes.
I think you guys are going to like this a lot more than acrylic.
Yeah.
Okay. I hardly ever meet anybody that the first time they try acrylic, they go, "This is the medium for me." Almost nobody. And I was just listening to this. I might have said this before. I was just listening to Jason Seiler a while back. and he was talking about, because the time frames for what he does are so fast that pre-digital he was using acrylics. He came out of like oils and stuff. He didn't have time to do those kind of illustrations in oil. So he would do them in acrylic, and he goes, man, I hated those things, you know. But like, look at this guy though. Look, these are all acrylic.
Nice.
Okay, it is a very versatile medium. That's not acrylic. Well, yeah, it probably is actually.
I like the Jack Nicholson one with like the face. Yeah.
Oh, and this is how big they are.
Wow.
Look at all that. This is nice. All this stuff here.
Mhm.
I like this one for the way he did the hair.
Oh yeah.
This one. I mean, he just goes all over the place. He's a good guy to look at if you want to. Paint's really big.
Yep.
This is straight up painting too, by the way. There's just no BS here. He's just painting. Okay.
Yeah.
Just got acrylic wired. Okay. All right, you guys. If there's no more questions, I'll let you go. Yeah. Oh, no, I already got everybody. Again, I'm not marking anybody late or anything. I want to see what you guys are going to try and get that to me really quick so you can start this week. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I at least would like you guys to get it washed in and all that kind of stuff. I don't at all expect it to be done or anything. I just want to get rolling. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I think we can roll through this one a lot quicker when we did acrylic because it should go
Oh, yeah.
faster. Okay. Elizabeth, what are you gonna? Do you know what you're gonna paint yet?
Well, I was looking up, hang on just a second. What's her name? One of the artists you talked about, Jenna Mattia.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
I
that'd
was
be a
looking
good one.
up her stuff.
Yeah, that'd be a good one. Make sure when you do your search as much as you can. Well, you're gonna trace it, so it really doesn't matter. But
she has a lot of animals, so that's why I was asking, like,
Yeah.
maybe I should find a person. So, and then there was that one that you shared with us with the person with the, like, they're holding coffee and it's cold, and then there's a fox jumping. Do you remember that one?
I don't even remember it.
I think it was from Brian Ajar, something
Oh,
like that.
Brian Ajar. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, I think it might have been
Yeah,
that
he's a
artist.
really
Anyway,
good-
I saved it.
He's a really good one too.
But I write down the artists that you mentioned and you show that I like, I'll write them down. So I was going through the lists, and there was one that I remember you shared, and it was like somebody walking on a street with a coffee and cold, and she had a big hat. And then there was a fox jumping. I don't know.
That's probably Brian Ajar. Brian Ajar is a really good one to use for this. Wilder Taub's great. Jenna Mattia's great. Probably Chris Hong, if you can find the drawings.
Oh yeah, I looked up his stuff too.
Her.
Her. Oh, I mean her. Yeah, she's really
she's a
good.
monster.
And I was looking up Jim Harris.
Yeah, any of those would be great. I just don't want it to be, I want it to be something organic, so a character, some kind of character, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
And don't give me like no anime. It's too
No.
flat. Okay, anime is just too flat. Don't pick anything. It's just flat. Don't pick anything that doesn't feel like it has form. You want to start with a good. And there's nothing wrong with it. I'm hopefully gonna have enough time to talk about sort of doing this using gouache for like flat shapes and stuff too. But that's not what this is yet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I got to go out and start doing videos on plein air. So when that class runs, I'm already loaded for it. So if I get those, I'll start sharing those too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, I'm gonna let you go.
Okay.
Start sending me your drawings you want to do.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, you guys, I'm gonna let you go. I'll see
Okay.
you on Friday.
Bye.
I'll see you on Friday. If you need to talk to me before that, talk to me before that.
Okay.
Okay. Take care.
All right.
Bye. Thank you.
Have a nice day.
You too.
Thank you.